You are listening to the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Horror Ramblings Podcast, the show about all things horror. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome back to Horror Ramblings, your spooky source for all things horror. I am your host, Stephen White, and with me, you know what? We're going to have to just W our third co-host because you have appeared on the show so many times now. Because Lester is once again off doing his, he's dabbling in witchcraft or something. I don't know. I think he's starting to summon the dead, and he's plotting a revolution of zombies and what have you. But anyway, Katrina is back with me again.
Yes, I am. Hello.
And since Lester wasn't around, kind of got wondering what we were going to do. And this actually came as a suggestion from Katrina because
Yes.
I've got a list of things, but it's trying to find something we can discuss.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of things that I watch
Yep.
and she maybe doesn't want to watch.
Yeah.
So we have this gray area. We have some median in between we have to find.
Yeah.
So anyway, we are discussing Sleepy Hollow as the title has suggested.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess most people would be like, well, why are you doing this in April? Isn't that more of a Halloween thing? And I mean, yeah, to a point, yes, but I don't feel like it's strictly bound by Halloween. So I feel like we can talk about it whenever.
Yeah, it's not like the Halloween movies where it takes place on Halloween. It's just a spooky story that's been retold 1,000 times.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people associate it with Halloween because of the pumpkin head and yada yada. And I actually appreciate this movie for using the pumpkin head idea as a joke and nothing more. It was never the headless horseman running around with a fiery pumpkin on his head. So
Nope. The only time you see it, it's not even him.
well, yeah. So a little backstory for anybody who may not be familiar, because sometimes I think that everybody would know about Sleepy Hollow. I grew up with it. I knew the story as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I think my first introduction to it, and you can kind of speak to this as well, like what your introduction to it. I'm almost positive my first introduction to it was in the Disney short, The Tales of Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
Yes.
So
I was trying to think of the name of it, and I was just going to say the cartoon with the frog in it.
yeah. So Disney does a lot of heavy lifting most of the time when it comes to these fairy tales or tall tales.
100%. They make it all as close to sunshine and rainbows as you can get without it, actually being sunshine and rainbows.
Sure. But I mean, funny enough, if you think about it, at the time, upon watching it, even it being a Disney production, this was around 1949, I think, is when it came out. And I know they still kind of had a way of telling stories that kind of, I won't say glossed over, but, they tweaked it. But there were some darker themes in a lot of those movies, like Snow White and Bambi and things like that, where it was, there were darker themes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like 99% of all Disney movies have dark themes around them. I mean, hell, half the children's mothers are dead in them.
Yeah, but I mean, over the years or decades, I guess I should say, it seems like they've tried to become more squeaky clean with their storytelling. Even when the darker themes are there, they try to sweep them under the rug or try to tiptoe around them so they're not as pervasive. Because in The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, it was a little dark. I mean, dark for a Disney story. Now, granted, they didn't go blood and guts and gore and everything like that.
Yeah.
But it was spooky for a kid.
Yeah.
And
Like that kind of darkness I can understand. Disney likes to go with that kind of psychological darkness.
Mhm. and I feel like it worked. Anyway, that's obviously where we got our start. But if you're unfamiliar, we're talking about this was a story originally written by Washington Irving. And I think, trying to remember when exactly, I think it was in the early 1800s. I'm not going to pinpoint it 100% like when exactly it was written, but I think it was part of a collection of essays and whatnot. And the story is kind of a local legend, but no actual fact. So 1819. Okay, see, Katrina's got Google. So she took care of that for me. So where it exactly originates from, I'm not 100% sure because I don't know.
I could probably
I mean, you
that up,
probably
too.
could, but I mean, even still, whatever local legends that you find, there's not going to be a whole modicum of truth to it. It's still kind of folklore and things like that. So the story goes, there was a man who was apparently decapitated. Now, what the film does differently from the actual legend, what was portrayed on screen, and then what was actually written in the story is that he was actually beheaded with a cannonball within the war that they were fighting, because this is like the American Revolution. So then he's a ghost searching for his head.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's the element of the story in which they're kind of pulling from. So, and of course, it just terrorizes whomever, and then that's where the local lore comes from, and then that story gets passed down and farther and farther and farther. But, I mean, it's really not that far removed when you think about it. Because 1819, that happened, being the American Revolution, probably would have been around 1775. So we're talking, what, close to 50 years that, I mean, it would have been removed from actually happening. So it kind of makes you wonder, where did that story come from those events? Like, if those events actually happened.
Yeah.
Okay, like someone saw this soldier be beheaded by a cannonball, and then there had to be events that happened after the fact that made people start to think that there was some phantom running around beheading people.
Yeah.
So was there maybe a serial killer about, or you know, they kind of took advantage of that? But even still, then they would have had to have known something and then kind of taken that as an element to scare people. I don't know. It just makes you wonder where it kind of came from.
I don't know. The only thing I can find is that it was based on the aftermath of the Revolutionary War, and some historical elements featured the Headless Horseman, which was supposedly a Hessian, and the Hessians were hired to aid the British in the war. But
So people were afraid of Germans even back in the American Revolution. Go figure. Anyway, but the movie itself, I feel like, remains true to the story, but kind of puts its own flair for a finality to the story, which I feel like kind of works when you kind of think about ghosts and witchcraft and things of that nature. So it kind of works in that favor. And directed by Tim Burton. It's got his stamp all over it, the whole feel of the movie. It's got that the windmill especially, it looks so Burton-esque in the entire movie.
That's what I said about her dress at the end of the dang movie. It looks straight out of like so many other Burton movies.
And that's one thing I want to point out. Anytime anyone says something looks Burton-esque, keep this in mind. He does storyboarding and pictures. He draws what he wants to see on screen. So he has a very distinct art style. And the production designers who can make that happen, I give them applause. because he has a very unique art style.
And I will say one thing I've noticed he utilizes, like obviously very pale people, very dark settings and everything, but stripes.
Yeah.
So many stripes. Nightmare Before Christmas, Jack Skellington, stripes. In this, the girl's dress at the end of the movie, freaking stripes. Sweeney Todd, I'm almost positive the one chick wears a striped fucking outfit at one point. Like, there are so many.
Beetlejuice,
exactly. Stripes.
Very good. Huh.
I'm sure if we went back and watched Edward Scissorhands, he would also have stripes, or somebody in the movie would have stripes.
That's something I've never thought about, but you're absolutely right. Stripes.
But it works because that's something that you see and you're automatically like, Tim Burton. Like that dress, if you did not know this movie was made by Tim Burton, you could watch the entire movie and you would start to pick up on it. But that fucking dress, I just feel like it screams Tim Burton.
Now, I do want to preface this by talking about his career a little bit up to this point, because I think personally, the way this movie plays out, the way it's portrayed on screen, the carnage that ensues, the dark humor that's pervading, I don't think anybody else could have made this movie. And I don't think that if this was I don't know if this was Tim Burton's idea to do this movie, and I feel like it was, because if it was a studio film, like they were preparing to do it and they were searching for a director, I don't think it would have worked, because this is his movie.
Yeah.
100%. This was not a studio mandated film and they hired him to do it. This is his movie. And I don't think if he was not the name he was at that time, this movie would have been made.
Probably not, because I can't think of anybody who would have been able to pull it off. Or if they pulled it off, it would be a completely different movie than what it is. Like nothing, I don't think anything of it would be the same. And including the actors. Yeah.
And especially when I'm talking about a lot of that, I'm talking about the gore specifically, because I feel like this is a story that a lot of studios would have been like, we can't do that. We can't. Oh, that's just too much. Yeah, and they would have been very, very reticent to say, yes, let's be blood, gore, carnage. And it had to be a director with a name that was proven time and again. And at that point, and I keep that in mind what I'm saying, at that point, he was that guy. I don't think he has that clout anymore. And that's not to knock him. But if you think about it, 2 years later, what did he direct? Planet of the Apes. And that was his journey down the wrong side of the hill. Okay? Say what you want, but his Planet of the Apes movie is...
I mean, he's done good films since then.
No, I'm not saying that he has not. I'm just saying that when it was announced Tim Burton's directing Planet of the Apes, people were like, yes. Yeah. I mean, I was one of them. I was like, hell yeah. We've got somebody who apparently loves the source material. He's going to put his own spin on it. I'm excited. And then when you finished, you're just like, I don't know what you were aiming for here, man. Is
that the one with the weird monkey getting ready to have sex scene that we make fun of all the time? Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Okay. Okay, yep.
So, despite there may be people out there who love it. I am amused by it. Like, I will watch it every now and again because the makeup effects, I'll give them credit. It's, phenomenal. But there's just a lot of problems with the movie that just, I don't know, it meanders and
honestly can't remember much about it other than that scene.
It's really not a lot to remember. I mean, it's just compared to all the others, it's really just not that good.
Yeah.
And that says a lot when I'm comparing it to the last original Apes, because Battle for Planet of the Apes felt like a TV movie, but it's still entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That's my opinion. People out there, if you're listening and you love it, good on you. It's just not my cup of tea. I love all my other Ape movies. Every other one that I've seen outside of his is a gem. I love them. That's just the black mark out of the group. And at least, hey, 1 out of 9 is pretty damn good.
Yeah. I mean, and we're definitely not in any way shitting on him.
No.
Because I think most of the movies that I like are Tim Burton movies.
I mean, he is a very good director. He's got very specific visions.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it blew my mind years later because one of his very first movie, matter of fact, was one of my all-time favorites growing up, and that was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And I didn't know who he was. You know,
Yeah.
It's like as a kid, I'm not looking at directors' names and being like, oh, dude, that guy. I'm just watching the movie and loving every minute of it. And it was all the quirkiness that he added to it is what I love about it. And if I'm thinking, there are stripes in that movie too. So, yeah, stripes abounds.
Stripes.
But no, Tim Burton is a fantastic director. And like I said, he's had ups and downs like most. I mean, I would even say Spielberg. Take a look at his run through the 80s and 90s, solid. And then somewhere along the lines, it gets a little wishy-washy. I mean, credit where credit's due. Created some great movies, but some of his movies are just not for me.
I mean, at the end of the day, one thing you can say about Tim Burton is I guarantee you the majority of people on this planet, or at least in America, we'll just keep it right now in America, but the majority of people in America know exactly who Tim Burton is. And I guarantee you they can name at least one of the man's movies.
But I'm going to go on record. If you are one of these people who thinks that Tim Burton directed Nightmare Before Christmas, you are absolutely 100% wrong. He did not direct that movie. Okay? Henry Selick.
It's the one he is most famous for.
But it's not his movie. Henry Selick directed the movie. He is the man behind the stop motion animation, and Tim Burton was involved as producer and probably designed the creations because it's got, again, stamp all over. That's his stuff. That's his design.
His stuff. That is one of the things that you were talking about, like with the windmill. Like that looks like something straight out of Nightmare Before Christmas. And it's crazy because when you look at it, you're sitting there thinking like, you know what time period this is set in and everything else, but it just looks kind of out of place, but not out of place. And even down to the village, a lot of the buildings and the style and stuff like that, like it just screams Tim Burton no matter what it's in.
Anyway, I just wanted to clarify if anybody had any misconceptions, because you did mention Nightmare Before Christmas, and just to be clear, the man deserves credit where it's due, and I know he's been saying that he doesn't get the credit for directing that movie like he should. But anyway, back to Tim Burton. Like I said, he was riding high. He'd done a lot of great movies up to that point. He had proven himself, and I think at that point, I mean, we're talking, maybe 5-6 years removed from Nightmare Before Christmas, and that was already a huge hit. So again, name recognition, that brand, is probably what helped sell it. So he comes to the studio. It's like, I want to make this. Probably has to pitch it, find the one that would be like, okay, because obviously the content could be weary for some studios because they don't like R-rated movies all that much anymore. They want that PG-13 money. And today, that's what this would have been, PG-13.
Oh, yeah, 100% it would have been PG-13. It's no bloodier than the Megan.
Yeah.
The one that we watched, because we watched the rated R version.
Yeah, but I mean, this was gorier than that.
Yeah, the amount, that was one of the things I started to notice about it, because even when they chop off the head and stuff, there's not really a lot of blood.
No.
And they kind of make note of that in the movie where, you know, kind of cauterizes the wound so that, you know, there's not like just blood squirting everywhere. The most blood you ever see is when Johnny Depp or
Ichabod Crane,
yeah, Ichabod, when he's doing like his experiments or when he's chopping at the tree and shit like that, and he's just getting like sprayed with blood.
It's done almost comically.
Exactly.
That's what it's for.
And I feel like the way that they did it that way is it's not disturbing.
Mm.
Like, I don't like a lot of, you know, blood and gore and stuff like that, but the way that they do the blood here, like you said, it's comical. So it's not kind of like what they did with Sweeney Todd. Like, a lot of the blood and shit's just kind of like, ha.
Yeah.
Like,
But I also bring this up too because I feel like that in the vein that Tim Burton was kind of going for here was a very specific type of horror film of the era, and that was in the 1950s and 60s with the Hammer horror from Europe, from England. They were doing their own versions of Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, things like that, and this had a feel like a vibe from that era, like he was trying to emulate that in some way. In fact, if you want to even go a step further, Christopher Lee was in this movie at the very beginning. He was the judge. A lot of people know him now as like Count Dooku and as Saruman in The Lord of the Rings.
yeah.
And funny enough, this appearance in the movie kind of reignited his career. So that's how he became those characters that we know from Lord of the Rings and that. But, I mean, he had an illustrious career before this. And I think that was kind of paying homage because he was Dracula in the Hammer horror films. And he was some of these old character creatures from those times. So I think it's definitely in that same vein that he was kind of aiming for. And I kind of appreciate that because that also kind of adds to the use of the blood and the gore. And even Ichabod Crane and the way he's kind of portrayed in the movie, because we were even talking about this beforehand, is if you see Ichabod Crane in any other medium, he's kind of this gangly, goofy looking inspector. And
like even in the cartoon, he's got this big ass nose that shouldn't actually be on a person.
And you take a look at other media, whether, I mean, I know I think there was a silent film version of this way back when, and even paintings that were done of the Headless Horseman and Ichabod Crane. He does not look like a handsome.
He don't look like no Johnny Depp.
Right. So, and I was telling you off mic was he had some reservations about that because that is always how Ichabod has been described, as this homely looking fella that just is not attractive.
Yeah. And by he, you mean Johnny Depp.
Yes. Johnny Depp was explaining that he didn't feel like he had the look and was willing to do makeup or anything like that to make himself look less attractive if that was necessary. And Burton told him that he was going to allow his actions to be the unattractiveness of the character. So where he's fainting.
Which,
and just
funny enough, I don't even find that unattractive about him. I mean, I love Johnny Depp, but even the whole aspect of like any of the other guys in the movie, with the exception of the young boy he takes on as his ward, are just, they're just those guys you want to punch in the face.
Yeah.
Like holier than thou, or, you know, this woman's mine, how dare you even look at her, and I'm going to be a big old butch man and all this type of shit. And it's just like, Ichabod, yeah, he might be kind of weird, but he's super smart. And he loves what he does, even though it grosses him out.
And I did want to kind of touch on that because this is a man who performed autopsy.
Yeah.
Didn't seem like it really fazed him. Of course, we didn't see the whole thing, but obviously he just seems prepared mentally to do it. But in crime scenes or encounters of carnage and chaos outside of an operating room,
Yeah.
he just can't take it, or he's just so distraught by it. And it's just an oddity. Like, why is it in the office he's okay with it, but everywhere else is just, oh God, I can't deal with it here. It's weird. And maybe that's kind of part of it too, what it's supposed to be, just kind of this weird quirk of his that out, I guess, in workspace, workspace is work.
In regards to that, there was a thing that I saw, I don't know how long ago it was, but it's about the phobia with blood. Like how some people, like you could literally cut your finger and it's going to make you woozy and stuff like that, kind of how Ichabod is. But there was a question, which I had never thought about until somebody posed it. What about women who have that phobia but have periods? And they actually said because it's like a natural thing and they are prepared for it, that it doesn't affect them the same way if they were to cut themselves.
Okay, I guess I could see that, because I have to admit something.
Yeah.
I have to admit something right now. I guess from a certain standpoint, I get where Ichabod comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, I have a line in the sand when it comes to blood and gore and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Like portrayed in movies or what have you, depending on what it is.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother me a bit. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess there are certain lines where my brain gets confused,
mm-hmm.
and I don't really know how to describe it. I guess I'm overthinking it in the moment. Like I know it's fake,
Mm-hmm.
but something in my brain is thinking about the reality of it all,
Mm-hmm.
and it disturbs me.
See?
And then it sends me into a spiral, and then I can't deal with it.
And see, I've noticed that about you too, because I'm kind of the opposite. There's something about, like, if there's extreme blood and gore, like the Saw movies, don't like the blood and gore in it. Like the story, do not like the blood and gore. Outside of the first one. The first one I don't feel like is that bad, but the rest of them, no thank you. But actual operating shows or like Dr. Pimple Popper and stuff like that, I can fucking watch it all day long and it does not creep me out. I can watch plastic surgery, them cutting into people, all that kind of crap does not freak me out. But I know I've watched stuff before and you couldn't watch it because it freaked you out.
But see, like even medical shows where they say, like they have mentioned how far they take it.
Mm-hmm.
You saw an example, because they even kind of argued with the MPAA about that. I think it was in part 4. There was a scene right at the beginning where they cut off, spoilers, if you have not seen this old ass movie, they cut John Kramer's head off and then start to operate on his brain. And I remember seeing, I'm almost positive I saw this movie in theaters, and it just kind of hit me wrong.
And which movie is it?
Saw 4.
Saw 4. Gotcha.
And I was just like I was trying to process it, but it wasn't like a hard thing to get over. It just kind of caught me off guard a little bit. And something about brains at that time too, because there was the scene in Hannibal at the very end. I think it was Ray Liotta was having his brains fed to him by Hannibal Lecter, and that fucking screwed me up for like that was the ass end of the movie, and I couldn't even finish it. I don't know what it was. It just, I don't know. I can't explain it. I don't know why my brain can't process it. But anyway, I remember when I saw that the first time, it was just that kind of same block. Like I couldn't get past it, but I did, luckily, and I watched the rest of the movie. But they said that they allowed that because it's medical. So when you see the medical shows, they allow the more graphic nature of it all because it classifies as like a medical procedure. That's what you're seeing. This isn't like glorified, carnage and gore.
Yeah.
It's a medical procedure. So it passes a certain bar, and they didn't get like a NC-17 or an X rating for it because they classify it as medical. In that regard, yes, I see what you're saying, that whole separating it from two different realms.
Yeah.
You know, your natural blood. Like, I've cut myself. It's not like I freak out when I cut myself.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go out and seek dead bodies like they have on the internet.
Oh,
where
yeah.
you can see crime photos. Like, I don't want to see that. Don't want to see it. I've seen stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'd rather not.
My little sister Emily, she had cut herself with a pocket knife one time, and it was literally like down to the bone and had to have stitches. And when she cut it, like, she was so calm, and she just said, "Here," and like pulled the skin apart. And I literally got so fucking dizzy, I thought I was going to pass out. That was the first time I had ever felt like that.
See, when you're talking about it, I don't want to hear it. And I'm telling you right now, I don't know what it is. I've seen stuff like that in movies before, and it just depends on what it is.
Yeah.
You know,
it just hits you a certain way.
Yeah. Like, you'll see limbs cut off and stuff like that. Like, I wince, but it's more like, like I'm just feeling the impact. But then when you do it to like a finger or a toe, I don't know why that's worse.
Yeah.
But it is.
And see, I think it's funny because for me, I feel like having a limb cut off isn't as bad as having one broken with like the bone coming through it and everything. To me, that's so much worse than just seeing something severed clean.
And a lot of movies are getting into that now, where they want to show you the
fucking
bone.
Broken bone shit.
Yeah.
I have seen that in person when my stepdad broke his damn leg.
Don't need to know about it.
No.
Nope. We're gonna keep moving. So
but no, with this movie, none of that. Like we said, the worst you see is just the heads getting cut off. One person gets impaled, and then the other one gets chopped in half.
But I mean, there are some moments. I mean, the headless horseman stabs the head, and then you saw the big pile of heads within the tree.
Yeah,
and things like that. So I mean, it's not. I would not necessarily say, like, if you don't want to, like, if I guess you're trying to look for a safe horror movie, this one would kind of hit that, but not so much. You know what I mean? It's kind of teetering on that line. Like, if you maybe had your kid and you've introduced them to
that's what I was
some
gonna say.
PG-13 horror, this one could be an entryway into gore.
Yes.
You know, try it out. Like, if you wanted to see how well they could adapt to it and see if they're ready for it, this one might actually be good. It's a little heavier on the gore than some others, but it's an R-rated horror movie that does not skimp on it. It's not afraid to show it, but it's not so graphic that it's just unwatchable. So I think it would be a good entry point for gore.
Yeah, and there's not even like, oh my God, I didn't even realize this until just now. For a horror movie, you don't see one single pair of boobies.
Well, Tim Burton, I mean, he's not known for...
I know, but still, not a single pair of titties.
But there wasn't one actress in this movie. Okay, well, I don't know all of them, but the only pair of boobies that I think... Well, I guess there's two. I don't know. Maybe they just weren't it wasn't in the contract. We didn't need to see boobs in this. I know that's almost
There's
like
a whole sex scene in the movie. Granted, they're doing it with their clothes on, but still. Like, how many horror movies have you watched that there is not at least one set of boobies?
I can name one.
What is it?
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Boom. 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 Not one set of tits.
Not one set of tits?
Not a set.
Not even a set without a bra or
Nope.
nothing?
Well, okay. Now
Yeah.
it's the 70s. No one was wearing bras at the time.
And the little skimpy ass tank tops where you can basically see everything.
No, well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, there may have been times that nipples were kind of poking out, but you weren't seeing the boobs.
I know.
Bare. So, yeah, look at that. I went back there. Anyway, so we're getting off topic.
Jason got it good. He got to see all the titties.
He did.
Yes. Anyway.
He's
so Tim
sexually
Burton
repressed. That's
Tim
what
Burton
it was.
don't do boobies. He's what?
He's sexually repressed. That's what it is. That's why he's so mad. You're seeing all these titties like, God damn it. Anyway. So movie kind of kicks off with a little backstory about everything. And then we see, actually we see someone die by the Headless Horseman.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the case comes to New York. And we see Christopher Lee kind of give the case to Ichabod Crane, who goes to, what is the name of the town?
Sleepy Hollow?
Was it Sleepy Hollow? Duh. I felt like there was another town. Maybe it was outside of that, or maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting confused with the actual
Did they
legend.
did they ever actually call it Sleepy Hollow?
I think they did,
I feel like they just kind of called it the Hollow. Because when the one witch, when they come up onto the one witch, she says, "Are you from the Hollow?" She doesn't say, "Are you from Sleepy Hollow?" She just says, "Are you from the Hollow?"
I don't know. Maybe I wasn't paying much attention to that one little detail. Anyway, I think the reason my brain got a little confused is I think there was an actual town where this legend kind of originated, and I don't think it was called Sleepy Hollow. And for some reason, my brain wasn't connecting those dots for some dumb reason. I don't know.
Gotcha.
But he gets there. We see that he meets with all the fancy people, all the rich folk who are the heads of the town, I guess. And we have a lot of familiar faces in this movie.
Yes, we do.
Like from every avenue of some pop culture. You see some. We already said Christopher Lee at the beginning. If we even go to the very beginning, right at the very first kill, or two kills, matter of fact, the guy in the carriage was Martin Landau, who did not speak a word, but he was, I mean, he's known for a lot of things prior to this. He was probably best known back in the early days of television for Mission Impossible. And he was in the X-Files movie. I know that's kind of a deep pull for a lot of people. That's just where my brain went. He's done voice work. He was in Ed Wood. That was another Tim Burton movie, and Johnny Depp was in. No, he was a legend who's done a lot. So it was kind of an odd cameo that he had no speaking lines and was just there to die. So maybe that goes back to that Hammer horror thing that I was talking about. Some random famous cameo at the beginning just to die. Scream. Yeah. That's what they were emulating. Scream. Because that was popular 4 or 5 years ago before that. But he gets to the town, meets Christina Ricci. Adam's Family is probably what she was best known for at the time. And Casper.
Or I was about to say, and Casper.
Yeah. So she hadn't really... So I want to talk about her for a minute because I don't want to knock her performance, okay? But I feel like she hadn't quite nailed her acting style yet, or the types of characters she's good at. Now, talking about Johnny Depp again, kind of going back to that because I know that's your favorite subject. We have talked about this before where people like to state that he plays the same character in every movie. And I personally feel like he is just a guy who likes to play quirky characters. Yeah. And this was a character that he could it's not just a bare bones, hey, I'm just this guy who's doing a thing. He has, eccentricities that kind of make him weird and, just off. Yeah. And I think he finds that to be a challenge because he's not just being a guy. He has to work in all these little quirks and make sure that they make sense to every scene. And I think that's what he did great here, with a lot of other characters before that. And I even told Katrina before this, fun little fact, this was before he popped. Think about that. As weird as that sounds, it was Pirates of the Caribbean where he popped. Like that was when people were like, oh shit, Johnny Depp. Before that, he had been in tons of movies. But he was just kind of that guy is in those movies. And, oh, yeah, I know him. He kind of plays a lowly little guy, and you don't really think about him. And then he does little quirky characters every now and again. Now he does them all the time. I love it. I think he's fine.
I love him.
But her, I don't know what it is because we've been watching Yellow Jackets. She was also in, she was in Wednesday, matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those things that we've recently watched, she had some kind of charisma and personality, and there was just something extra she was giving to it. And she's so good. And I love her characters in both of those things. But here, and maybe it's just she doesn't have a lot to work with. It's just kind of like, I'm here as a love interest, and I'm kind of enamored by you, and that's that.
I'm here as a love interest / red herring.
Yeah, and there's really not a lot going on, and I don't want to really put that all on her.
Yeah.
But
I mean, she really doesn't have that many, like, speaking lines. She's usually just kind of there.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to put that on her as, like, it's her fault. But there's just, she's not doing anything that just makes her character stand out as memorable in any way. You know what I mean? Especially compared to some of the other characters in the movie. And I feel like it's a shame. I don't know if anything, like, I don't think any other actors could have done any better or added something. I just don't know. And she was fairly new at the time. I mean, she was probably close to 20 at this point, 19, 20, somewhere in there when she did this. So, you know, still young, still up and coming. She's even talked about in interviews, I've heard this, that her performance in Casper, she didn't care for because she just felt like she just did not nail it. Like she felt like she was doing less than. And hell, it's funny too when you think about it, because you look at her performances in the Addams Family, and she's just on point. Like Addams Family Values, she owns that fucking role. So I don't know. It's disappointing to see her in a role where she can't really do something more.
Yeah. Because
we know she can do more.
Yeah.
You know, we know she's got the chops for it. So I don't know. Just it feels like a character that wasn't really worth her ability and time. And that's, again, no offense to her. I think it's just the story. But who else did we see in that group? We saw
Dumbledore.
Yeah, Michael Gambon, who was Dumbledore number 2. Sadly, as much we have to make that distinction. And
he's the one that most people know as Dumbledore.
Right. Which, you know, is really sad too, because Richard Harris was such a good... He did a really good job in the role for the short amount of time he had it. Did he only do 2 or 3 movies?
I feel
like
he only did like 1 or 2.
I think he only did 2. I think he passed right after Chamber of Secrets. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Who was the other guy you said? The uncle?
I
can't remember
the actor who played Uncle Vernon from Harry Potter was also in the movie. Both him and Dumbledore were on the council.
And I'm going to look his name up because I don't want to just shaft him and say that guy who played Uncle Vernon, because Richard Griffiths, whose name, now that I see it, I'm like, of course, duh. And we also had Ian McDiarmid, who everyone knows as Emperor Palpatine, who in that entire time, because Katrina was seeing all these familiar faces, and I kept saying, you'll know him, you know him, you know him, you know him. Just wait until they speak. Ian McDiarmid sat in this opening scene in this room, and I was waiting for him to speak. He didn't speak a word. He might as well not have even been in there, because he says nothing.
Yeah.
They maybe show his face, one cutaway, and that's it. But he says nothing. So I thought, is he a mute in this movie? No, he eventually does speak later, but it was just funny that I was waiting.
Yeah.
And it was just like, okay. And then finally we get Michael Goff, who people would probably know best if you grew up in the 80s and 90s as Alfred from the Batman movies.
He does not look anything like he did in those movies.
No, he was very disheveled.
Like Uncle Vernon, as soon as you see that man, you know him. I mean, if you have seen Harry Potter, if you see that man in anything else, you're automatically like, that's Uncle Vernon. With the man who played Dumbledore. And I say this because I'm horrible at actors' names, unless they're Johnny Depp.
Yeah, trust me, we've had these discussions.
But when you
I try.
Dumbledore, because at first you were like, you should recognize him. And at first I was like, his eyes look so familiar, but it was as soon as he spoke, it's literally just his voice.
Yeah, Michael
He
Gambon.
didn't change his voice at all for either character, and it's like, Dumbledore.
He's got a very distinct voice.
He does, and I love it. It's such an amazing voice.
Mm.
But the man who played Alfred, like, you kept telling me I should know him, and even when he spoke, like, I was just like, he looks familiar, but he doesn't look familiar. And then when you said it was Alfred, I had to sit there and think a minute, like, which Alfred you were talking about. And we had literally just watched something the other day, and I stated that he was my favorite fucking Alfred.
I honestly, I mean, and this, again, no offense to all the other actors who've done Alfred, I would say more I'm aiming toward Michael Caine, because I think he's the best Alfred we've had thus far outside of Michael Gough. But there was just something about him. He like nailed this balance between the old Alfreds and kind of this new Alfred. So he's kind of teetering this line, but he's still kind of a father figure. And there's something about him. You just love him so much. And he's always doing what's best for Bruce in those movies. And I don't know, he's just one of the best things of him. Even in the worst movies, he's the best part.
He is.
So, anyway.
He's just so loving, and you just can't help but love him.
Mm-hmm.
But he's the big, bushy eyebrowed Alfred.
Yeah. Which I've never noticed, but I mean, now that you pointed it out.
He's got massive fucking eyebrows. That man turns sideways, and you see the profile. You can see the hair sticking off his fucking forehead.
I will have to look. Maybe we'll have to get him on 4K, and I could really see him. The detail. But Ichabod gets the skinny on everything going down in Sleepy Hollow. They make it seem like, it's a ghost story. And of course, he's looking for the truth. And then he eventually learns that, well, maybe they're actually telling the truth. It's an actual ghost or phantom or whatever. But he has to be proven this to be true. Now, they actually do tell the entire backstory to the Hessen soldier. And again, like I said, based on the details that I mentioned before about his head being blown off by a cannonball, which I think that would have been really cool. I mean, not cool, but, just visually, holy shit, that would have been. But I understand what they were doing here for the sake of the story. It had to go the way it did. So, fighting in the war, and he gets chased off out into the woods, sees little girls. And then they kind of rat him out because that's just so funny. That little girl's just like, snap.
Yeah, right?
Like, what?
He literally goes, shh, with finger up to his mouth and everything. And she just like, snap the stick.
Yeah, she's like, fuck you. And then they take off. And then, of course, soldiers find him, kill him, behead him, and then bury him near a tree.
Which, I do want to talk about just the style that they gave him, because they literally made him look like a monster before he ever even died.
And that is one aspect I've never quite understood about the movie. Why if there was some historical element to like the Hessen soldiers where they had jagged teeth for some weird reason, sure, okay, but it's just weird.
Yeah.
I mean,
like he had which obviously they had him wear contacts because the actor doesn't have piercing blue eyes.
Who is Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
By the way.
Which I made the comment because they make him wear, 2 sets of teeth. He's got the top and bottom set, and they're these big jagged, like monster, almost like 30 Days a Night vampire style teeth. And I made the comment that maybe they made him wear it so Christopher Walken wouldn't have to speak. Because there's no way he would have played that role if he had any speaking.
He's fighting in this war. And, I walked into a forest and there were these 2 little girls standing there with sticks. And I said to myself, shh, quiet, little girl. I'm trying to run from soldiers. And this little girl looked at me with this blank stare. And then she broke the stick. I was just overcome with just betrayal. How could she do this to me? And then they came and they beheaded me. Anyway. Why? Here's my question. Okay.
Yeah.
For this role.
Uh-huh.
Why cast Christopher Walken in this role?
I honestly feel like either it was one, because it's Christopher Walken, or two, because he does kind of have, and no offense to Christopher Walken, I do love this man. He is a sweet little man, but he does kind of have one of those faces that just kind of is intimidating,
Okay.
I guess, in a way. So maybe it was the whole with the teeth and the eyes. I mean, he did look fucking creepy.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's the only thing that makes any sense to me, because I feel like for a role like that, you could have just gotten some ravishingly handsome guy or something of that nature who just happened to have this muscular physique,
Yeah.
and he's like that intense anger soldier face.
Mhm.
And then, of course, when he comes back, you can make it look a little bit more demonic, and then whatever. But it's just such an odd bit role. He's not primarily in this. At the beginning, you see that in that story, and at the end, you see his face again. That's it. He's not in the movie. He doesn't speak. He shouts.
Yeah.
And that's it.
It's like growling and grunting.
Yeah.
And that's, basically it.
So it just seems like a very odd role, because it's not like he was an unknown at the time. He had been in plenty of movies up to that point. Maybe his career was kind of, maybe like Christopher Lee's, kind of in this ebb and flow where it's like, I'm taking a few different things here and there. And, maybe not anything big. Or maybe Tim Burton was such a fan, he just wanted to work with him. He's like, hey, you want to be my villain? And again, going back to the Hammer horror stuff, you cast a big name in those villainous roles, boom, there you go. So could be something like that I don't understand. It just seems like an odd choice for the character that you don't see to cast that name in the role. I don't know. It's bizarre to me. But anyway, we see his story. Ichabod goes on searching throughout, and eventually he starts, they come across the one body first, right? As they're talking, there's a killing that happens after he gets his horse, and then they go out and they find the body, and then he whips out this box of very Tim Burton-esque,
it is
crazy
literally
laboratory.
It is literally like a fucking bag that you would have seen from like one of the animated, or one of the claymation movies or some shit. Like you said, very Tim Burton-esque.
Yeah.
But yeah, just little fucking scissor lift looking tray that comes out and a whole bunch of tiny little vials and shit.
And even the tools, like his goggles, like as soon as you see that Tim Burton-esque look with these big magnifying monocles and just the little teeny weeny one and just everything about it, like you see it. That's the Tim Burton aesthetic that's pervading throughout, is when you see these little trinkets and tools that he has, because even like his operating tools are unique. And he even says, I made them myself, which kind of makes you wonder what he made them for. Personally, like what were you trying to aim for that was trying to make it better than what was already there?
Yeah.
Because they're very simple tools.
Yeah.
What are you having to add to these very simple tools to make them your own?
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense, but that's the quirkiness of the character, and I think that's one of the more interesting aspects. But he notices the cut. He notices it's the devil's fire has burned it without blistering, which I've always found interesting. Like, what would that look like? You know what I mean? Because I've always heard that when you see that in movies, clean cut, no blistering, and it's cauterized. You've heard similar things like that before. What does the blistering look like? I guess.
I don't know.
How hot is it?
Is it lightsaber hot?
Yeah, like I guess I'm trying to understand how, like, what temperature would it have to be to cause blistering for it not to be a clean cut or some fashion like that? I don't know. But It's just one of my little weird thoughts. And then, of course, they do the autopsy on the, was it a wife? A woman?
Well, there was a woman, but that wasn't the one that died in the woods. That was a different body that they took out of the ground.
Because they were trying to match her.
Yes, because they said that there was 5 murders, but Ichabod was like 5 murders, but only 4 bodies. And then they noticed that the one body, which was a woman, had a cut in the abdomen. So then he performed the autopsy and then found out she was pregnant.
Right. And this is one of the scenes that we got to see not only more of his quirky little tools, but a very comical blood spurt.
Yes,
and very, very bloody.
There's no way it would have been possible. First of all, this woman died way before Ichabod even got there.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, even if they didn't embalm back then, which I don't know if they would have anyway.
I don't think so. Not in that time. I don't think that.
But the blood, you wouldn't have thought that there would be any pressure for it to spray out.
Yeah.
Like the heart is stopped. It's been stopped. Everything should be cold. Everything should be, congealing, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
But like it does. It squirts out and straight into his on
big
his glasses
monocle.
and in his mouth, which
Yeah.
he gets a lot of blood in his mouth.
And that goes for the same scene where he notices the tree is bleeding and starts chopping at the roots, and they start spraying blood all over his face, and he's just like, God damn it. Like, you just see that look, but he just keeps at it. And that's one of those weird things. Like, he can do that, and it doesn't make him pass out, yet he watches one little thing happen, and he's just like, ugh. Like when the Headless Horseman comes by, cuts the one guy's head off, and stabs it right in his crotch.
Literally, the head rolls right up to his crotch.
And then he rides by, stabs it, and rides off. And then next thing you know, he's out. And, okay, so sidebar from here. Now I'm thinking about that because as that scene happened, then we kind of get these dream sequences about his mother. And I thought these were kind of interesting scenes that I was trying to understand what purpose they served in the greater scheme of things. And I guess it was just him trying to relate to other people, but I'm not 100% sure that it necessarily did. So maybe you can kind of speak to it if you feel like maybe I'm missing something here, because there are numerous dream sequences where it kind of relates back to his mom. Apparently she was into witchcraft. Or at least that's what is implied.
Yeah, he kind of makes it seem like she was... I mean, I guess by today's standards, it would be considered like a green witch. Somebody who communes with nature and uses, herbs and stuff like that for natural healing. And his father seemed to be a holy man, as in an actual member of the church. Yeah. Whether it be a priest or... what it would have been back then. Somebody who probably wasn't supposed to have a wife and child.
Right. And obviously I think they said that he did kill her.
Yes, he put her in an Iron Maiden.
Yeah, that's right. And then we see her kind of fall out and pretty much fall on him as far as the way it kind of laid out, unless it was just kind of his mind.
Yeah, I think that part was his mind, but he remembered where he backed onto the chair that had the spikes, and that's how he got the little hole in his hands, which he didn't remember up until that point. And of course, that was after a lot of the events were happening and everything.
So it seemed like an interesting backstory for the character, but also I didn't feel like it paid off in any way into the grand scheme of the story.
I feel like it came, trying to think of how to say it, because there was a lot of, the whole religious type of aspects in it. Like, the whatever in the hell he was. The one guy I said he plays like every asshole in a fucking movie.
Yeah. Jeffrey Jones, known guy who's taking pictures of little boys or whatever.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Anyway.
Yes. Him, he gives Ichabod a Bible when, he first meets him and everything like that. And then when Ichabod starts having, more dreams and everything and starting to remember his past, basically, he makes the comment to Katrina that, you know, he's remembering and that his father was a holy man and he killed his mother to save her soul, and that's what drove him away from religion. So I feel like it's kind of, it makes him feel sympathetic to Katrina, because even though he thinks when he goes to leave after her father dies and everything that happens at the church, he goes to leave and he honestly thinks that it was her who sent the Headless Horseman out to kill everybody. And when the kid that he takes under his wing, when he asks, you think it's Katrina, and he tells him, don't ever say it. So he's trying to protect her.
Yeah.
Whether, she's a witch or not, he cares for her and he doesn't think that she's inherently evil, that there's more to it. He just hasn't figured it out yet. And of course he ends up figuring it out that it wasn't her. But I feel like it just makes him feel more sympathetic, because all of the other people in the town seem to be very religious. It's a very, God-fearing town. And they're looking, it's a ghost, a demon, whatever in the hell you want to consider him. I mean, I would consider him more of a demonic type source than an actual ghost. But I don't know. Like, I guess that's where I just stand with it. It kind of makes him be more sympathetic towards her.
Mm-hmm. No, I can see that aspect of it. And I think the term you're looking for, I think he's more of a poltergeist. You disturb the remains of the body, and they come back and they haunt. I think that would be more appropriate.
Yeah, but then, the evil stepmother does the whole ritual type thing to summon him, to send him after somebody, which is more demonic.
A little mix of both. How's that?
Yeah. Let's say he's all of the above.
Sure.
They should have just salted and burned his bones. Come on.
Yeah. See, they should have just called the Winchesters and everything would have been fine. Did they ever do a Sleepy Hollow episode? Or anything about that?
I don't think they ever did a Sleepy Hollow episode. I know they've done several episodes that kind of go along with like those whole kind of stories you tell your children to scare them type thing, like Bloody Mary. Which is one of those things I was going to bring up earlier when we first started talking about the whole story of Sleepy Hollow, is I feel like there's a lot of like these little stories that you hear about and nobody knows like their true origins, because there's so many like variations to what they're actually what they're actually about, I guess.
Well, I think a lot of them come back from, we're talking about legends that go back hundreds of years at this point. And then the story gets much like a Bible, where stories are retold in a different way, in a different fashion, and they're told differently, and so on and so forth. And the original text is lost in translation over the centuries, to where it's maybe not quite the story that it once was. So there's conflicts and variations. You're like, well, which is correct here? So probably something in that realm. And,
the whole idea of Sleepy Hollow, like you were saying, if it was based in any type of, I guess reality and an aspect. But it makes me think of yet another Tim Burton movie, Sweeney Todd. I had a friend, which you obviously know, but to all of you at home, I had a friend whose mother was from England, and she grew up hearing the tale of the butcher of Baker Street, and she thought it was real. And my friend grew up, and all of her siblings all thought that this was real. And when that movie came out, they all refused to watch it because they thought it was a real story, and that this person was actually killing people and, selling the meat or giving the meat away, and people were eating human pies. And I finally looked it up because I wanted to watch it so bad. And it turned out that it used to be just a tale that parents told their children as like a scary tale. And then people started to believe it. So it basically gained traction, and people actually thought it was based off of an actual person who lived on this street and murdered people.
See, I can even pinpoint that to the fabrication of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because they promoted that shit as if it was a true thing. And it fascinated me when I first heard about it. I was like, this shit actually happened? Holy shit. And it just weirded me out. But then you find out it did technically happen, just not that version of the story.
Like The Mothman. That is a freaking movie I want to go back and rewatch sometime, because I can remember watching it as a kid and it absolutely fucking terrified me because it was supposedly based on a true story. And I mean, I was terrified of moths for the longest time because of it.
Also reminds me of another film I want to talk about, but you know what? I want to talk about it right now. I'm going to hang on to that. I'm going to save it for another episode because that's a good one that I really want to cover. So I'm going to come back to that. I'm not even going to say it. Anyway.
Right, back to Sleepy Hollow.
Back to Sleepy Hollow. I almost said black to Sleepy Hollow. There was not one black person in this movie. Tell me I'm wrong.
I mean, that's something people have literally said about Tim Burton, though, that he does not have people of color in his movies.
That racist son of a bitch. No. This is a tough one. Nope. There's two. Planet of the Apes. And I don't mean that in any racist context. Okay? Follow me here. There was a guy that was part of the human resistance, and Michael Clark Duncan was General... I cannot remember his name. That's how little I remember that movie. I don't even remember Mark Wahlberg's name. He played a guy who was an astronaut. Doesn't matter. Who else we want to talk about? We haven't talked about this dude. I know he didn't have a real big part in the movie, but he was in the movie. The other love interest to Christina Ricci.
I'm going to be the big bad boy.
Yeah. Casper Van Dien is the guy's name. He is one of those actors that never popped. And not to say that he's a fantastic actor. I'm not saying he's a bad actor. I'm just saying he's never done anything to wow me. Yeah. But, you know, I think one of the movies of his that I absolutely love is Starship Troopers. And I think he does a fantastic job in that movie.
Oh, holy shit. I was wondering where the hell I recognized him from.
So, he's a good actor. I won't say he's a great actor. He's a good actor. And I much respect for him. It's nice to see him in something outside of that franchise that he walked away from and then came back because no one else was giving him work. And I'm not disrespecting. Fun fact about him in this movie, and I tried to see if I could see it, and I didn't, so I'm going to assume they cut around it. But apparently in the fight scene between him and the Headless Horseman, I think it was in the actual scene where Johnny Depp kind of came in too, and they were doing like a three-way fight. Yeah. He apparently got his finger broken, like I guess it got hit with one of the axe or something like that and broke his finger. But he said he continued on throughout the fight and didn't let it be known until they yelled cut because he was so afraid they were going to cut him out of the scene or something like that if he said anything. So he pushed on until they said cut, and then he was like, fucking finger. So good on him.
With that scene, oh my God. So yeah, I did want to point this out because this is one of the problems that I do have with the movie. A child dies. Granted, you do not see the child die. And I still do not understand, even after watching the movie, why the fuck the kid died.
Well, was he not kind of like the woman said? There were other people in the room that heard.
Yeah, but she only said the husband.
That's true.
She said that the midwife told her and who was in the room, but her whatever in the hell she called him husband didn't say shit about the kid. So unless it was just might as well kill him so he's not left orphaned.
Yeah, but I don't think that's true. I think she had to have targeted the kid as well, because every person until they actually got in his way, he was like, I don't care about you. I'm not here for you.
Mm-hmm.
So she had to have targeted that kid.
Yeah.
For some reason. And that's not on him. That's on her for putting that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, she's the one that, I mean, obviously, he wasn't a good person before he died, but
he's a tool.
If he was going to be somebody who was going to be, just willy-nilly murder children, he would have killed both of the girls and he'd have never fucking died in the first place.
Right. So, no, I mean, there had to be a scene, and I've honestly, after I saw that, I thought the same thing. I was like, well, why is he going after that? Because we saw Casper Van Dien's character come in, shoot him, and what does he do? He's like, dust off, and keeps walking like, I'm not here for you, fuck off. And it wasn't until he actually just continued to pursue him that he decided to fight back.
Mm-hmm.
But she had to have done something to have him target that kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't make any sense. Because if they were just throwing that in for the sake of shock value, even though we don't see it, we know it happened.
Yeah, because, I mean, he literally walks out and he's shoving shit into the bag, which you assume are the heads.
Right.
And you never, again, see the little boy.
So it's an odd addition, but if there's not a scene where you can actually see that happen, unless he was like accidentally, or she was rubbing blood on people. Like I'm not sure how she was targeting people. Like, how did she do that? Because I saw she rubbed the blood on the one dude.
Yeah.
But was she doing that with everybody, or was there something else to it?
I don't think so, because we saw when she captures Katrina at the end, she just cuts off a piece of her hair and then summons him.
So I wonder if there was a scene in the movie somewhere where she got something from the boy. Could have been accidentally. Possibly. And he just became a byproduct of that or something. I don't know. It is an odd scene when you compare everything, especially that happens afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, why would he go back after him unless he was being targeted?
Yeah, I mean, he literally goes to walk out of the house and then turns around and, finds the kid.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I don't know. It's one of those that I feel like it didn't make sense, and I would have preferred an explanation, because if she would have said, she said it in front of her child and husband.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's your explanation. He was a loose end. But she never mentioned the kid. It was just the midwife and her husband and how they played a role in everything else that was happening and why she was doing what she was doing. So, again, I feel like maybe it just boiled down to collateral damage type thing of her just being like, kill all of them.
Yeah. And it
kill the whole
well
family.
Yeah.
But, and that's one of the things that we also said. She is also another person that we recognized.
Mm-hmm. Miranda Richardson was, you know her from Harry Potter.
She was the journalist.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, we literally Rita Skeeter. Rita Skeeter. Skeeta, something like that.
Skeeter.
Yeah. The little one bitch.
Mm-hmm. So they got all the Harry Potter alums in this.
Right? And you didn't even mention the other member of from Star Wars that was in it.
No, I wanted to get to him because while we might not see him in full form,
mm-hmm.
The Sleepy Hollow Phantom, the headless horseman himself, was played by stuntman Ray Park, who most people would know as Darth Maul. And if you pay attention to his weapon work,
mm-hmm.
you can see it. Because dude's flipping blades and swords and just swinging and just...
I was going to say, not even outside that is one of the things that I also noticed. You can tell that man, the one who plays,
mm-hmm.
The Headless Horseman, he's so much bigger than...
If you're going to say bigger than Christopher Walken, you're dead wrong.
I meant taller.
Dead wrong.
Is it really?
He is
Christopher
small.
Walken looks so fucking small in that movie. Like when you see him running, through, the forest, even on horseback with the woman. Like, he looks so much smaller than him.
And maybe they're trying to create that illusion because he is a smaller man. Don't forget, he was Toad in X-Men.
Holy shit, you're right.
So he's a smaller statured
and I
man.
guess the where the neck is would actually be on top of his head too, wouldn't it? Yeah, so.
Well, actually, to be fair,
Or did they green screen?
Green screened his head, so he was wearing a mask.
He looks so fucking big in that movie, though.
It's the beauty of movie
Holy
magic.
shit, I did not realize Christopher Walken was that big.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Now, granted, when I say Ray Park is a smaller man, I don't mean like he's teeny weeny, but he's not 6 foot tall. He's not like the average Hollywood height. Yeah. He may be about the same height as a lot of other actors that portray these 6'2" giants, and they're like Tom Cruise 5'5", and you're like, what? No, that's not right. They just gave him some crates and he's standing on it. So no, he's smaller than most, but he's very limber. He's very athletic. Yeah. He's done a lot of stunt work, and like I said, the weapon work and all that stuff that he does, that's why he's swinging and flipping and everything in his arms and hands and whatnot. So, dude's a badass.
Oh, yeah.
I have mad respect for a lot of the work he does, especially just what he did as Darth Maul. Like, he brought it. So, in fact, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but fun fact about him in Star Wars as Darth Maul. Apparently, now I'm assuming this is friendly, but still fun nonetheless, is that he and Ewan McGregor kind of got into a friendly rivalry on who was going to be the better lightsaber handler, and really went ham on each other trying to outdo one another. So that's commitment right there. I want to see who is the bigger badass.
You better leave my baby alone.
But yeah, what else do we want to talk? So yeah, Miranda Richardson, we'll kind of go back to her because she was the baddie in this. She was one of the sisters, the two little girls in the forest.
She's the one that snapped the twig. She's the little bitch.
Yeah, she was the bitchy little 5-year-old that snapped his twig.
That child was not no 5-year-old.
But yet, in the moment, she was like, I want to, summon the devil, or whatever she said.
Well, she literally talked about how she broke the stick on purpose, obviously, and watched him die, and then realized if she could summon him, then basically she could be what she wanted to be. Yeah. And get her revenge on the man in the town that made her poor and basically killed her mom. Yeah.
So she was behind all this, and this is where I say that the story kind of veers off into unfamiliar territory with the way the story was written and other media, because now we kind of have a real antagonist to kind of point the finger at, because while the Headless Horseman is technically our antagonist, we find out he's nothing more than a tool for her to exact her revenge and get what she wants. So in turn, he kind of comes back around, kills her, and then everything's back to normal, or he's laid to rest, she's gone. Yeah. And then that's how you kind of get a happy ending out of this. So in that regard, I kind of appreciate that, because in other media, you don't really, like, how do you end the story of a ghost? How do you stop it?
Yeah, well, like that freaking one damn movie we watched that I didn't care for, Sinister. Yeah. Yeah, like there is no happy ending. There's no everybody, it's done. He's gone. Nobody's ever going to suffer anymore. Like, it just keeps on going. Yeah. And I am definitely one of those people that like a happy ending or at least some closure.
No, like, I get it. But I understand where you're coming from. Okay. I appreciate Sinister for what it was doing. It's very dark. I don't think it's one that I could go into and watch repeat viewings. Like, I would want to watch it again just out of appreciation for the story and what they were doing. But again, the darker themes, you don't seem to always want to go back to that. So it's like you have to be in a mood for it.
Yeah. Like even the Black Phone. I'd like to go back and rewatch that and see if there's little things that, I've missed and stuff like that. Sinister, Nope. No Sinister and Smile. Both of those. I have no interest in going back to rewatch.
Well, what I was going to say about Sinister, I mean, at least in appreciating what it was doing, is you're talking about something. It is disappointing when you cannot have closure or a happy ending, but when you've created such a being that's what it thrives on, I feel like it would be difficult to just have like this easy out. You know what I mean? So understanding that we're just seeing it from now, granted, there's a sequel. I don't know how that goes. I heard it's not as good, but at least in that regard, just as it is, you're talking about this curse that just passes on and passes on and passes on. And we know it's just going to keep going as much as it's fucked up. That's what a curse is. And sometimes it can be broken, but...
Or a loophole, like in The
loophole.
Ring.
But
because
at least...
that's one I was also going to bring up, is that's one that it makes a point to say, like, it's not done. She's not gone. She comes back. She killed the guy at the end of it. But the woman and the kid were spared because of the whole recording the tape and passing it on. So basically passing off the curse, like in It Follows and even Smile in a way.
Yeah. But at least in that way, I feel like it was a great way to just tell that story about the curse.
Yeah.
Because it was about this man trying to understand what was going on, trying to understand the events of everything. And then when he realizes what it is, it's too late. And it's already got a hold of his family, and it's too late. So,
and I mean, in that movie, it is kind of the consequences of his actions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because his family would have completely been spared. He was survived, got to watch his kids grow up. If he just wouldn't have been so, I need to make another best-selling book. I need to stay on top. I need to be rich. I need to be famous. If he'd have just let that shit go and done something else instead of moving his family there, they would all lived happily ever after.
So, and that's the consequences of his hubris. So, again, I appreciate it. I think it's a great story. It's very dark. And again, hard to want to go back and watch a dark movie when you know something's going to be sad and you know how it's going to end. You're just like, ugh.
When you know it's bleak and there's no hope.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. And that movie really made you feel like there was going to be hope. All the way up until the very last fucking bit of it. There was hope. And then it just like crushed your fucking dreams right in front of you.
And trust me, there are a handful of movies I sit there and think that I really want to watch because I think of a lot of great things in them. But I also know the pervading sense around it. It's just like, is that what I want to deal with right now?
Yeah.
You know? And so, I mean, that's a fair point. Some people can do it, some people can't. And that's fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. This movie, on the other hand, is not one of those movies. This movie is it's a fun romp.
It is. It's really fun. And I feel like it's not like anything you would see today. In the sense of, I mean, obviously it would be a PG-13 in today's standards. Because if it was R, there'd be a hell of a lot more blood, guts, and gore and just...
Yeah, I think if someone was to attempt this today, now, granted, this is not to forget, I never watched it, but there was a Sleepy Hollow TV show, which I have no idea what that's about. Somebody wants to tell us about it, they're more than welcome to. I don't know what it's about. I didn't know if it was a modern retelling or what have you. Came on Fox. No one watched it, so that tells you enough. But, yeah, if someone was to try and do this today, I feel like there would be some element to it where they would try to either really take it and just make it as dark and graphically gory as possible, or it would be some glorified PG-13, fluff fest that just misses all the creepier elements to it. And that's where I feel like this kind of teeters a line, because it, on one hand, feels like a very studio movie. Like, it's got a budget behind it and it's got great actors behind it. And then you come in with that, surprising gore
Mm-hmm.
And you're just like, oh, okay. So it's that kind of movie. And you're kind of playing both sides. The dark humor adds levity to it, so it's not too much on one end, so it's not bleak, because it can feel that way at times. But I don't know. It's a nice balancing act. And I feel like it does a great job at telling the story in a very unique way and adding some new elements to it.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think of almost like a Goosebumps type story.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like, it just, I don't know. Like you said, it's definitely one of those, if you have like teens or even, kind of preteens, because I know a lot of younger kids are definitely getting more into the horror movies and stuff like that now. This is definitely one of those that I feel like most kids in today's society can handle.
Yeah, 100%.
Unless they're very, and not in a bad way, but kind of sheltered kids where you don't let them watch anything that's very, not so much blood and gory, but, I guess super action-y or anything.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Even me growing up, I would say that there was, like my parents, I'm not going to say that they kept me sheltered from a lot of things, but it just depended on what it was. Like if it was an R-rated action movie, RoboCop, Predator, something like that. These are fairly graphic movies, but they're not horror per se.
Yeah.
Like
RoboCop is one of those movies that I can remember watching as a young child. Like my parents let me watch it, but then there are other movies like Interview with the Vampire. I wasn't allowed to watch that until I got older. Queen of the Damned, wasn't allowed to watch it until I got older.
Yeah, and it's just, I guess our parents are just weird. I don't understand it.
There's just some. I even remember there was I can't remember if it was a movie or if it was a TV show or what it was, but it was Alice in Wonderland, but it was like really dark. And I remember my mom not letting us be able to watch it because it was darker. And I can't remember anything other than there being knights in it. Like a white knight and a black knight, almost like chess pieces, but they were actual knights or whatever. And Alice was an actual, I don't think she was a little girl, but she was younger. But it came out when I was young.
I think I know which one you're talking about, but I thought that was made for TV.
So. And I know it came on the TV because it was when we had a VCR and Mom recorded it from the TV.
So why would that be too far?
I don't know, but I remember her not letting us watch it.
Your mom's weird. Anyway, if you don't have anything else to say about this movie, I think we pretty much covered it. I kind of recommend it. I know that it's one of Tim Burton's better films, and I think it's got a good cast. I think it's got an interesting take on the story, and I recommend it. And it's like I said, it's a fun horror movie.
Yes. I definitely recommend it. And if you are a Johnny Depp fan, like myself, 100% recommend it because, hello, Johnny Depp's the main character in it. But yes, I like it.
Well, Ramblers, let us know how you feel about Sleepy Hollow. What is your favorite version of Sleepy Hollow? Is it that Fox series that I mentioned that nobody watched? You can let us know on Twitter at Horror Ramblings. And if you've got more to say and a tweet's just not going to cut it, send us an email at horrorramblings@gmail.com. If you want to discuss horror with like-minded individuals, join our Facebook group. And you can join us in our Ramblers room on Discord. You can even find us on Instagram to see an assortment of horror images. And if you're feeling generous and want to support the show financially, head on over to patreon.com/pencil and paper productions to chuck in a buck. Help the show grow by leaving a review on your favorite podcasting app. Tell your friends to find us on their favorite platform as well. And if you happen to be using Spotify, you can take a look at our weekly questions and polls. Let us know what you think. Finally, if you need a central hub for any and all things, pencilpaperproductions.com/horror-ramblings. Links are in the show notes for your convenience. And remember, stay spooky out there.
This has been the Horror Ramblings podcast. Join us next time for even
This has been a Pencil and Paper Podcast Network production.